every now and then I meet my undergraduate students and then do some career related counseling and ask them, what are you preparing for, or what is your career goal, what do you do for now, okay, other than just to studying, right? And they say, Korean students, right, I am preparing for those exams to become public servant, or exam to become CPA, right? And I say, why do you spend your life 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, like many years preparing for these exams again and again? And they say, oh, those income is very stable. And I say, do you know your potential is much bigger than that? And if you become a venture, entrepreneur, God knows what will happen to your venture, so that you can hit the jackpots like crazy and then you can become a billionaire. Or just have you thought about going to, those investment banking business, or more exciting jobs than that, more risky business than that? And they say what? I am a risk averse person, as if their economics, as if they did great jobs in economics. The only terminology they can bring is risk aversion, right? And that's, standard economics. They say people are on average risk averse. Okay. The thing is, are we always risk averse like that? Are we always risk averse? Correo? Really? Right? Let's imagine this situation over here. Imagine you are richer by $20,000 now. Okay? You got some $20,000 in your pocket, and you somehow got a choice between A and B. A says you win, $5,000 risk free, which means for sure you will get it, 5,000. Okay, adding to this one, and the other is like flipping a coin, half and half. Head, you win 10,000, and tail, you get nothing. Which one would you go? A or B? Usually, in this situation, people choose A. Gain situation, if it is going to be gain, I want some stable income, even though it is, low income, CPA, or 공무원, or public servant. Just give me money, like that. And this. Well, put this situation in the next slide. Think about this. Now imagine you are richer by $3,000 instead of that, right? And you walked by and you encountered a mafia gangster. Unfortunately, the gangster gives you two options. Hey, 형씨 일로와봐. And then you have a choice, A or C, right? C, right? Losing, or I'm gonna take you $5,000 for sure, risk free. Lose money, $5,000, risk free. The other option, D, is let's flip a coin. And head, you win, just go home. Tail, you lose, $10,000. What would you do? Half and half. By the way, don't imagine a biased coin or anything. Half and half, right? What would you do? Risk-free loss or risky loss? Looking for a chance of not losing anything, or just losing everything? Just not everything, but partially, right? In this case, if I ask this question in real time in classroom, usually people go for this, looking for some chance like this, because there is the chance that you can keep everything in your pocket. Okay? Now, which one is risky? Red, a pinkish one, or black one? Risk is about having this uncertainty. Okay? And you go for this risky choice instead of risk-free choice. You said you are risk averse, but in loss situation, people go for risky choice. That's an interesting phenomenon. Now, what is interesting about these contrasts is that the expected value is the same expected value. Here, in your gain situation, starting from 20,000, well, either you get into 25,000 in the end, right? In the gain, your expected value of gain, expected value of your gambling would be identical all throughout. The option A, 25,000. B, 25,000. Why? This is because you start with 20,000, right? Plus half a chance of getting 10,000, plus half a chance of getting nothing. Make sense? You get identical situation, but you choose risk-free when it's a gain situation. On the other hand, over here, it's a loss situation, and in the C case, right, you end up with 25,000, which is 30 minus 5,000, like that. Make sense? D, this, you end up with, again, identical 25,000, which is 30,000 minus half times 0, half times 10,000. Like that. Make sense? The beauty of this is that you end up with the same identical expected value in your final wealth. What did expected utility theory say? The final wealth matters. And then you end up with the same final wealth, right? And you are risk averse always. But you end up being more risk seeking if you perceive the situation as loss situation instead of gain situation. All right? If this number doesn't make sense to you, let's imagine, okay, that you walked by in the streets, down the streets, and you came across a mafia gangster who has a baseball bat that can beat you. And then he says, you have two options, man. One, 5,000 times I'm gonna beat you. In the middle, you may die. You may. There's a chance that you may die, but for sure you're gonna get beaten 5,000 times, right? The other is flip a coin. Head, you win. You can go home without getting beaten by me. Tail, you lose. I'm gonna beat you 10,000 times. Here, you could have died. There, for sure you will die. But there's a chance that you can survive. Which one would you go? And then let's imagine that you are way weaker than that gangster, so that there's no way of getting out of his hand, right? Then what? Would you look for chance for survival or go for this one? Clear. You will look for chances, right? You're gonna die anyway. 2판, 4판. There's a chance. Take it. In a loss situation, people look for chances. They become risk seeking. We are not always risk averse. Only in the gain situation. If you perceive your situation as a gain situation, then you will be risk averse. If you perceive the situation as loss situation, you will start to seek a chance, right? And this is why strategically in military strategy wise, right? They say when you chase after or surround your enemies and then attack your enemies, don't make him or her perceive the situation as a loss situation. 도가내든지. It's like if the guy perceived this as a loss situation for his life, then he or she is going to pursue a risky chance of whatever it may be. All kinds of creativity will explode in his brain so that he will look for chance, and then you can be screwed. Okay, don't pursue or chase after the guy to the end until as if you're going to kill him, right? Whenever you chase after somebody, always open up a road that the guy or the person can flee. Okay, so that there is a perceiving the situation not as a loss situation, but as a gain situation. Oh, I can survive somehow over there, right? Loss situation, how you perceive the situation. Is it loss or gain? It matters a lot, right? And you become more risk seeking depending on the situation. Now let's get to this prospect theory with this explanation, right? Prospect theory was proposed by Nobel laureate Tversky and Kahneman, right? It is an alternative to expected utility theory. It incorporates key features of how people actually choose under uncertainty, preference for AD or BC in our prior example, right? And people overestimate the likelihood of certain events, and then people tend to make choices by comparing outcomes to a reference point, something called a reference point. We're going to get there. I.e., what matters are gains and losses, how you perceive the situation. Okay, not the total wealth at the end of the stage, right? Now, actual choice under uncertainty, the prospect theory technique works like this. It best predicts behavior when choices are gamble in the form of, there's the X1, like your expected wealth or your wealth at the end, with reference to your initial investment or some of your reference point R, right? So is it your gain or loss considering your initial investment? Is it going to be gain or loss? And then the probability of P1 and P2 in each different state of nature, right? And then prospective theory, we use something called the value function that looks like this. What the heck is that? You may say that sigma is just a summation of each different states of nature, and then pi of P is just the probability weighting function, which is going to be your, ending up. All those probability weighting functions should also add up to be 1 anyway, but slightly different from probability that you used before, because the extreme stage probability, you're going to perceive it to be bigger than actual objective probability. Your subjective probability, you can think about it this way. Now, reference point R is an important one. Often it is an initial wealth, right? Or it's anchored on some unreasonable ways, right? Irrational ways. Now the value function, okay, is here. What you see on your horizontal axis is your gain or loss with respect to your reference point R, right? This is not origin, but R, right? It's not O, but R, we say it. And then the vertical axis, this is something called value, okay? Instead of utility, we just label it as value, okay? And then gain situation, loss situation, and then how much you feel happy, how much you feel miserable, right? It shows up. And the degree of being happy or not, right? Well, is on your right hand side is much more like what we saw in our expected utility theory, right? Well, in a gain situation, you get more risk averse like this. It's more concave function, risk averse function, right? And then $1,000 gain versus $1,000 loss. In the left hand side, well, you hate losses so much. With the same amount of same degree of loss compared to gain, how much more would you feel unhappy? Well, the magnitude difference, if the research in the literature, they find that the difference is like 2.5 times. 1 times happy, then 2.5 times unhappy if you lose the same amount, right? So what's the consequence? Well, the curve over here meets each other at the reference point, but the curvature or the slope is significantly different over here. Differentiable versus not, it's not, right? But I'm not going to ask you about the differentiability. It's not mathematical economics, so don't worry about that part. Another part I want to tell you, if you perceive this your situation as a loss situation, you become risk seeking instead of risk averse. It's not like this, it's this. Okay, so how you perceive the situation is very important. And then several key principles of prospect theory is like this. Principle 1, people value changes in wealth, not the state of wealth, right? No matter how rich you are, right? The more gain or loss, that relative gain or loss relative to my reference point matters a lot, right? In expected utility theory, only final wealth mattered, but it's not in reality, okay? And then bet on the toss of coin. If you lose $1,000. What is minimal gain? Yeah, this is 2.5 times the magnitude difference. You feel unhappy 2.5 times more compared to your gain situation for the same magnitude, plus and minus, right? That's principle 2, okay? And then consequence of this is that people cannot do loss cutting sales. Well, let's say you invested in a certain, let's say, Texas Instrument stock, and you invested it when it was $100, right? And your loss cut rule, let's say it is like a 30% loss cut rule. But for some, whatever reason it may have been, the Texas Instrument had some largely disappointing results somehow. And then the stock price plunged by about 50% instead of 30%. It's well beyond that loss cut rule. What should you do? If you're a rational person, rational investors, you would just cut loss and then realize the loss and say move on to the next one as if nothing happened. Okay, loss cut. But it's so much painful to realize that loss. Instead of realizing that loss, you want to keep it as a paper loss and then let sons and daughters sell it. When you die, jumbo, just keep it in my portfolio as a losing stock, but it's just a paper loss. It's okay. But when I die, I'm going to just give it to my son or daughters and then say, you sell it after I die, not in my living days. Loss aversion, which makes you lose your money even more. All right? You have to be more rational. This is where the fintech service can help those investors. And I'm going to ask you this question in your exam as well. All right? This is one side of disposition effect. When this Texas Instrument stock plunges down, what do? Instead of doing loss cut selling, you buy even more. Why? To lower down your initial purchase price, lowering down your reference point, as mental accounting kind of things goes on, mental, and then keep on holding on to money losing stock. Bad habit called disposition effect. All right, that's one side of disposition effect. And principle 3, purchase price or some initial state, often used as reference points. R, prospect theory does not say where R comes from. I say prospect theory better represents the reality compared to expected utility theory, but I don't say prospect theory is a perfect one. Okay, it's not flawless, right? Where does that R come from? The reference point. Can be anything, right? It's something you are anchored on, right? And then initial purchase price usually, right? A, right? For example, over here, A bought the stock, a certain stock, let's say, again, Texas Instrument, $100. And B bought the Texas Instrument, but at $200, right? The same stock, but different initial purchasing price. Now, the stock dropped $10 today from 160 to 150. Then, A versus B, which one will be more upset today? Okay? For A, the reference point is 100. And it's already in a gain situation. 660, that means 60 plus to 50 plus. Okay. For B, it's already the loss situation. $200 I paid and I lost. And I lost $40 and I'm losing even more, right? Which one will be feeling more unhappy today? B. It's more painful when it is a loss situation, right? Yeah, the other one, this part, forget about it, right? Principle 4, people are risk-seeking over losses, but risk-averse over gains. The shape of the value function is more like a kinked S-curve, right? Financial market application, well, people are reluctant to realize their losses. Which will you choose? Bet E and F, earn $1,000 with 1% and 0 with 99% versus earn $10 for sure, right? People usually bet for this one. Risk, if it is a gain situation, you will go for risk-free gain, right? And then principle 4, based on this, right? People are risk-seeking over losses, risk-averse for over gains. When you perceive the situation as gain situation, you feel happy to realize the gain, even the gain amount is very minimal, right? You feel like a bird in a hand. It will be realized soon, so let's just realize it. Come on, right? The Texas Instrument, for example, the price of this increased, let's say, by about 10%. Should you sell it or keep it? Momentum says once it starts to increase, then the momentum will keep on pushing the price over and over and over. So you'd better wait, okay? But this, right, makes you, the prospect theory tells us that you are more likely to sell and realize the gain yourself, right? 소확행, right? So that's the other side of disposition effect. And 강왕구, right, that YouTube star in finance, he said disposition effect is just like one of the two worst enemies in your investment life. It's just like a Stalin, right? Worst enemies, right? Makes you lose money or minimize your gains because you sell off those money-winning stock too early. Why did you sell it too early? Come on, your spouse will, blame you like crazy. So that's that. Principle 5, nonlinear weighting of probabilities. People overweight very unlikely events and underweight common events. I didn't show you those examples too much about it, but usually extreme events like a tsunami at Incheon Sea, right? The West Sea of Korea, right? Least likely to have this kind of tsunami, but the event itself, we perceive it to be like so much extreme. Oh my God! So it's more likely to be happening over there. No, you have to be subjective in assessing those probabilities. But our psychology, right, makes us overweight those extreme degree of probability. That's why we use probability weighting function, all right, pie over there. Anyway, so prospective theory, well, it organizes several patterns, right, in actual choice, the 5 principles of how people actually make choices, right? It tells us about it, and it's often more descriptively affecting our reality than expected utility theory. Now, it has a lot of implication about our what we experienced over the last year, right? Prospect theory. The question over here I address is, why did so many individual investors started to jump into the stock market in 2020 with the pandemic, right? Global pandemic. And you see very interesting pictures or meme over here. Meme. What is it? What you see over here is originally a picture that described the invasion of Japan, invasion of Japan in Busan, right? In 1500, like Imjinweran, right? Like 500 years ago. So many Japanese soldiers invaded Korea, and then it was like we had to fight. But this is like, well, there was a coronavirus invading everywhere from the world, and then the individual investors over here were trying to protect those Samsung Group stock, and then all these Yeonggi금, or the pension funds, and all these kind of guys were fighting against the foreign investors as well as those coronaviruses. I mean, those economic crises is the situation when this kind of xenophobia pops up in their mind. We have to watch out that one. But anyway, those individual investors were excited more to jump into the stock market like this, as if they are more patriotic fighter for their national economy or things like that. But as it turns out, it's not only the Korean market, but also NASDAQ, and then other countries' stock market situation was similar. A lot of individual investors started to jump into the stock market with the beginning of the COVID-19, right? And what you see on this left-hand side, the picture is by Mille, the ladies who are picking up those, how do you call that, right? The wheat after the harvest. After the harvest, some wheat brushes over there, the wheat crop is dropped in the ground. It's a good chance to pick up. We call it 줍줍, right? 주서, right? And they put this in the meme. You see Samsung Electronics logo over there, and then they're picking up, right, the undervalued stock, right? I told you, and this picture is so much insightful, by the way. And this is the ladies, by the way, the ladies, not the guys over here, right? Coincidentally, I told you they are very underconfident. They only start to buy when the price is so much deeply undervalued, deeply lower than their value estimate. Okay, and then that was the March. That was March 22nd last year. I exactly remember the day. Right? Why did I remember that day? Because that was a date when my students started to do their mock trading for our class, and then on average they earned like 30% plus or something. So that many of them were very happy, believing that their stock investment skill is very good. Misperception, by the way. Anyway, so this, right, ladies are good at, buying these deeply undervalued stocks, and they make a lot of money, tons of money. And then, there's a study they found out in Korean stock market, those ladies were outperforming, especially the ones who joined the stock market in 2020, right? But the question is, why did so many individual investors, guys and girls all together, join the stock market? Okay, you can stop your videos over here and then try to answer yourself somehow. And I give you 5 seconds, right? And then my part of the answer is like this. Number one, individual investors got more chance of trading thanks to the less degree of monitoring in the job, right? If you are working, right, your boss is watching over you, and your competitors, your peers are always watching you. So that if you try to do the stock trading using your handphones or your computers, your peer will always say, "Oh, Andy, how much money did you make?" And your boss will pay attention to you. And next time they have to lay off some person, you will be the first target. That's the work ethic in America. Not as much in Korea, by the way. But because there is a social pressure that everybody trades. But still there is a pressure inside the office. If you have to go to the office, right? You have to be careful. But in your home, you're free. All right, nobody touches you, nobody bothers you, so it gives you more chance to trade it. And then attention drawing use like stock market crash naturally attracts individual investors, and then individual investors are by nature they're contrarian. When it is plunged, they buy it. When it is overshot, they sell it, right? They're not that good a momentum trader, okay? Not a trend chaser. Number 3, quantitative easing, right? Those central banks, right? Monetary policy. This is a global crisis that we have to do something about it. And they just did it, right? Helicopter money. Oh, here's your free money for you, $1,000 for each and every household. What do you do with that? The original intention was encouraging you to buy breads and feed yourself, right? But what did you do? Invest in the stock market, right? Naturally, those risky assets price popped up. Asset value inflation goes on instead of hyperinflation. Coins and real estate and everything, right? And fourth, I say loss aversion played some role over here, right? Why loss aversion? Well, here, right? Sudden increase in the chance of getting laid off due to the pandemic, right? This is the pandemic, right? For the restaurant business or travel business and a lot of, the day-to-day business, right? Small and medium-sized companies, right? Then you stop having customers coming to your stores. You are more likely to close down your stores and your life is screwed. Your whole career may be screwed up. It's a lost situation. You perceive this as a lost situation, would you become more risk averse or more risk seeking? What does the prospective theory tell you? You become more risk seeking, and there's a stock market for you. Yes, let's go. There's a coin market for you. Let's go, man. And moreover, there was a fear of missing out. In Korea, the Korean government miserably failed in real estate policy, which contributed to skyrocketing the real estate price, apartment price, Gangnam area, Gangnam style shooting up. And then you miss the chance of buying house, and makes you more anxious to seek risk in any risky asset market, stock, coin, whatever it may be. Let's go for it. That's why. Okay? There could be other reasons as well. You come up with some reason, tell me. If it is convincing, I'm going to include over